My name is Elena Marlowe, and I was 36 when my parents sold the house where I learned to walk, where my grandmother taught me to make pie, and where my brother had spent years telling everyone I was only visiting. They did not call me before they listed it. They did not ask me before they accepted an offer. Instead, they invited me to a Sunday dinner, waited until the roast was cold, and announced that the buyers would be moving into my childhood home before fall. My father looked at me across the table and said, "You never wanted that place anyway. You always liked being independent." My mother nodded like that settled the question. My brother Adam lifted his glass as if the sale were a family achievement. He said it would finally give our parents room to breathe. Even though everyone at that table knew part of the money was supposed to rescue the business he had started, abandoned, and then blamed on the economy, they expected me to cry. They expected me to plead for a room, a photograph, or one last chance to walk through the garden. I did not do any of that. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, listened to the plans they had made without me, and thought about a phone call I had received 3 days earlier from the Mason County Clerk's office. The woman on the line had asked, "Are you Elena Marlowe? Because your name appears on a deed connected to 18 Wren Street, and we need to confirm that you are aware of a pending title request." That was the first time I understood why my grandmother had looked at me so carefully 11 years earlier and said, "Keep your copies somewhere safe." One day, someone will tell you that you do not belong to what I made sure would protect you. This is a family conflict story about betrayal, quiet revenge, and the moment a family that had mistaken silence for weakness learned that a recorded document can speak much louder than an argument. Before I take you back to that house, I want to say something to anyone who has been made to feel optional in their own family. You are not selfish for wanting the truth. You are not cruel for needing a boundary. If this story feels familiar, leave a comment with the word "scene" so other people know they are not alone. And subscribe for more family conflict stories where the answer is not a scream or a scene, but a clear decision and the courage to stand by it. Now, let me take you back to the version of 18 Wren Street my parents wanted to erase. I used to believe that peace meant agreeing to whatever kept the room quiet. It took me years to understand that real peace begins when you stop volunteering to carry a problem someone else created. My parents had made a plan, Adam had built a future around it, but none of them had asked what it would cost me. That was why I stayed calm at the beginning. I was not trying to protect their comfort. I was making space to understand the facts before I decided what I could live with. The house at 18 Wren Street was never grand. It was a 2-story brick place on a corner lot, with a porch that leaned a little to the left and a maple tree that dropped red leaves into the gutters every October. The kitchen floor creaked near the refrigerator. The upstairs hallway always smelled faintly like cedar because my grandmother kept sachets in the linen closet. There was a cracked blue tile beside the bathtub that my father promised to replace for 19 years. I knew all of those details because I had spent most of my childhood trying to be useful enough to be noticed there. My parents, Daniel and Rose Marlowe, liked to describe our family as close. In public, they told people we had Sunday dinners, holiday traditions, and the kind of loyalty that could survive anything. My father would put his hand on my mother's shoulder at neighborhood events and say, "We taught our kids that family is everything." At home, family meant something more specific. It meant Adam's plans were investments. My plans were phases. It meant Adam's mistakes were bad luck, while my careful choices were treated as proof that I thought I was better than everyone else. It meant my mother kept a framed photograph of Adam's high school baseball team on the living room wall, while the certificate I earned for finishing architecture school stayed in a folder in the hall closet until I took it with me. I was not unloved in the way people imagine when they hear stories like mine. No one shouted at me every day. No one locked me in a room. The hurt was quieter than that. It lived in the pauses after I spoke. It lived in the way my father would ask Adam for advice about a repair I had already explained. It lived in my mother's habit of saying, "Elena can manage," whenever someone asked whether I needed help. I learned early that being the competent child can become its own kind of punishment. The more dependable I was, the less anyone felt obligated to consider me. My grandmother, Florence, was the only person in that house who seemed to understand what was happening. She did not make dramatic speeches about it. She did not confront my parents in front of me. Instead, she paid attention. When I was 12, she noticed that I was the one washing dishes while Adam disappeared upstairs with his friends. When I was 16, she asked why my college brochures were hidden under a stack of mail in the kitchen drawer. When I was 22 and working 2 jobs to finish school, she quietly began sending me grocery money with notes that said things like, "For the week you should not have to prove you deserve dinner." After my grandfather died, Florence moved into the small bedroom downstairs. My father said it made sense because she was getting older and did not need to be alone. The truth was more complicated. She had owned the house long before my parents did. My grandfather had bought it in 1968, but the down payment had come from money Florence earned sewing wedding dresses in the back room of a department store. She always reminded me that the house was not a gift to my parents. It was a home she had protected for decades. When I came home from college one weekend, I found her sitting at the dining room table with a stack of papers and a pair of reading glasses low on her nose. "Sit down, Ellie," she said. I had not been called Ellie by anyone else in years. My parents thought it sounded childish. Adam thought it sounded like a name for someone he could tease. From Florence, it sounded like a place I could rest. She pointed to the papers. I am making sure there is no confusion later. I laughed because I did not understand. I thought she was organizing recipes or tax records, but she looked serious. "Your father and mother will have a place to live for as long as they need it," she said. "But this house should not become a prize for whichever person talks the loudest when I am gone." I told her I did not want anything. I meant it. At 24, I was renting a studio with a radiator that banned all winter. I had no interest in a family fight over old furniture and brick walls. I wanted my grandmother to feel safe. I wanted to graduate, find steady work, and stop watching my parents look at me like I was a guest who had overstayed. Florence reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "This is not about getting something," she said. "It is about not being erased." The document was a life estate deed. Florence had transferred the property to my parents for the duration of their lives, with the remainder interest vested in me. Her attorney explained it in plain language. My parents could live in the home. They could not sell the entire property as if I did not exist. Any sale would require my agreement because I was named in the recorded deed. Florence wanted them protected, but she also wanted me protected from the day the family decided I was easier to leave out than to include. I remember signing a receipt for my copy. I remember the attorney, a woman named Judith Rowe, telling me to keep it somewhere secure. I remember my father coming into the room near the end of the appointment and saying, "This is all unnecessary. We are not going to fight over a house." Florence looked at him for a long moment. "I hope not," she said. At the time, I thought that was the end of it. I put my copy in a fireproof box with my passport, my college transcripts, and the few photographs of my grandfather that I had rescued from a drawer. Then I went back to my life. For the next 10 years, I worked hard enough to build the kind of stability my family had never believed I could create. I became a project architect for a firm that restored old public buildings. It was not glamorous work. Most days involved permits, structural reports, meetings about windows, and arguments over whether a budget allowed for original wood trim. But I loved it. I liked taking neglected places and finding the structure that had held them together all along. I bought a small townhouse across town. I planted herbs in clay pots by the kitchen window. I learned how to cook for one without making it feel lonely. I visited Florence every week, usually on Wednesday evenings, and helped her with groceries, prescriptions, or whatever repair my father had promised but had not gotten around to. Adam's life moved in a different direction. He had charm. He had the ability to make every new plan sound like the beginning of a success story. At various times, he wanted to flip houses, open a sports bar, start an online supplement business, invest in a brewery, and manage a small construction company with two friends who had never managed anything. My parents treated every failure as a temporary setback. They loaned him money, let him store equipment in their garage, and told him he just needed one good break. When I tried to warn them that the loans were adding up, my father accused me of being jealous. Not everyone wants to spend their life behind blueprints, he said. I did not answer. I had learned that in my family, facts were often received as insults if they made Adam look careless. When I was 8, I used to sit under the dining room table during adult conversations because I thought no one could see me there. That was how I first learned the difference between what families say and what they mean. My father would tell relatives that Adam was a natural leader because he could convince 4 neighborhood kids to build a fort. Then he would turn to me and say, Elena is our little helper, because I had brought plates outside without being asked. Even as a child, I understood that one description gave a person a future and the other gave her chores at school. I was the kid teachers liked. I did my work. I remembered deadlines. I did not ask for much. My parents praised those things when other adults were listening, but inside the house they treated them as the bare minimum. When I brought home a science fair ribbon, my father said, "Good. Maybe now you can help Adam with his project." Adam's project was a poster he had not started. I stayed up past midnight cutting letters for him while he watched television. The pattern became so normal that I almost missed it. At Christmas, Adam got the expensive thing he had mentioned once in passing. I got practical things, a new backpack, socks, a desk organizer. When my mother made a mistake in an argument with Adam, she apologized to him. When she made a mistake with me, she said, "You know I did not mean it that way," as if understanding her intentions was the same as being treated well. Florence never told me to hate them for it. She was too wise for that. She would take me on small errands instead. We would go to the hardware store, the library, the bakery, or the plant nursery. In the car, she would ask me what I wanted from my own life, not what I could do for someone else's. Once, when I was 17, she parked outside the library and said, "The people who need you to stay small are usually afraid of what happens when you stand up straight." I remember looking out the window, embarrassed because I knew exactly who she meant. "I do not want to fight with them," I said. "You do not have to fight," she told me. "Just do not hand them the pen when they try to write your story." Those words stayed with me through college. I chose architecture because I loved buildings, but also because I liked evidence. A wall either carried weight or it did not. A roof either leaked or it did not. You could argue about taste, but you could not argue forever with the cracks spreading across a foundation. I found comfort in that. At school, I learned to read plans, permits, and site reports. I learned that every building has a history beneath the paint. I learned to look at what was recorded, not only at what people claimed. My parents were not impressed at first. They told relatives I was still figuring things out even after I had been accepted into the program. When I got my first paid internship, my mother asked whether it was really a job or more of a school thing. I smiled and said it was work. It was easier than explaining why her question hurt. The one time my father showed real interest was when Adam started talking about flipping houses. Suddenly, he wanted to know about permits, structural inspections, and market values. He called me at 10 o'clock one night and asked whether I could come over the next morning to look at a property Adam wanted to buy. I went because I still believed helping would make things different. The house was in terrible shape. There were water stains on the ceilings, a bad foundation wall, and electrical wiring that looked as if someone had assembled it during a storm. I told Adam the price was not a bargain if the repairs were what I thought they would be. I showed him where the costs could double. I suggested he walk away. At dinner that night, he told my parents I had been negative because I did not understand business. My father said, "Some people see risks everywhere." I looked at the table and realized I had spent an entire morning giving professional advice only to become the villain in Adam's story. That was the night I stopped offering my expertise for free. It did not make me less loving. It made me more careful. The first real wound came the year I turned 29. Florence had fallen in the garden and broken her wrist. It was not a major injury, but it meant she needed help for several weeks. I adjusted my schedule and worked from the dining room table at Wren Street while she recovered. I drove her to therapy. I cooked meals that were soft enough for her to manage one-handed. I sat with her in the afternoons while she told me stories about the neighborhood before the highway came through. Adam visited twice. The first time, he brought flowers that still had the grocery store sticker on them and spent most of the visit on his phone. The second time, he asked my grandmother whether she would consider co-signing a loan for his new business idea. She said no. He left early and told my parents she had been confused. A week later, my mother told me I was taking over. "Your grandmother likes to feel needed," she said. "If you keep doing everything for her, she will become dependent." I looked at the bag of medications on the counter, the cast on Florence's wrist, the laundry waiting in the hall. Then I looked at my mother. "I am not doing everything for her," I said. "I am doing the things she cannot do this month." My mother sighed like I had disappointed her. "You always make things so intense." That was the sentence that stayed with me. Not because it was the cruelest thing anyone had said, but because it showed me the rules. If I helped, I was controlling. If I stepped back, I was selfish. There was no version of me that could be right if someone else wanted to avoid responsibility. Florence heard the conversation from the living room. That night, after my parents went upstairs, she asked me to bring her the fireproof box from the closet. She took out a yellow envelope and wrote on it in slow, neat handwriting, "For Elena, if they ever pretend not to remember." I told her she did not need to do that. She smiled sadly. "People remember what benefits them," she said. "Paper remembers what happened." The envelope contained a certified copy of the deed, the attorney's letter explaining the life estate, and a short note from Florence. I did not read the note then. I could not bear to. I put it in my own fireproof box when I went home and promised myself I would never need it. 3 years later, Florence died peacefully in the downstairs bedroom. The whole family came to the funeral. Adam gave a speech about how she had taught him to dream big. My father talked about her strength. My mother cried in a way that made people hug her and tell her she had been such a devoted daughter-in-law. I sat in the second row and listened. I did not correct anyone. I did not tell them who had been there on Wednesdays, who had learned the timing of Florence's medication, who had kept the house running while my parents traveled to help Adam with his latest project. I did not need to prove my love for her to people who had never paid attention to it. After the funeral, my father told me they were keeping the house exactly as it was. "Your grandmother would have wanted that," he said. For a while, they did. Then Adam's construction company began to fail. I only learned the details later. He had signed a lease he could not afford. He had taken deposits for jobs that ran behind. He had borrowed against equipment he did not fully own. When clients started demanding refunds, he came to my parents. They had already used savings to cover some of his debt. They had refinanced once. By the time they decided to sell Wren Street, the house was the last large asset they believed they controlled. They did not tell me any of that. They called to invite me to Sunday dinner. I almost declined. I had deadlines at work, and I could hear the strain in my mother's voice when she asked. But some old part of me still responded to the word family like it was an obligation carved into bone. So I drove across town with a bottle of wine and a pie from the bakery Florence liked. When I arrived, Adam's truck was in the driveway. The porch light was on even though it was still afternoon. I remember thinking the house looked smaller than I remembered, as if the years had pulled it inward. Dinner began politely. My mother asked about my job. My father complained about property taxes. Adam told a story about a client who had been impossible, leaving out the part where he had missed the deadline. I listened, nodded, and waited for whatever reason they had called me there. It came after dessert. My father cleared his throat. "We have some news." Adam grinned before my father even spoke. My mother reached for his hand. "We sold the house," my father said. For a second, I did not understand. The words seemed too casual to belong to that room. Then my mother added, "It is a good offer. We need to be practical." Adam said, "You will be happy for them when you see the numbers." I looked around the dining room. The wallpaper Florence had hated was still there. Her old clock ticked above the china cabinet. The floor beneath my feet had worn smooth from decades of people passing through. I could feel grief rising, but underneath it was something else, the sharp, clear memory of the clerk's phone call. 3 days earlier, a woman named Marcia Ellis from the Mason County Clerk's office had left a voicemail asking me to return her call. I thought it was spam at first. I only called back because I had time between meetings. She told me a title company had requested certified copies of older records related to 18 Wren Street. While locating the chain of title, she had seen my name as a vested remainder holder in a deed recorded in 2013. The request paperwork listed Daniel and Rose Marlowe as sellers, but it did not mention me. "I do not give legal advice," Marcia had said carefully. "But I thought you should know your name is on the record." I thanked her, then spent the rest of the afternoon staring at my fireproof box. That evening, I called Judith Rose's old office. Judith had retired, but her former associate, Morgan Bell, agreed to review the document. Morgan confirmed what I had barely allowed myself to hope: my parents could not transfer full ownership without me. If a beer's title company had done its job, the sale would not close unless I signed. If my parents had represented otherwise, they had a problem, not me. At Sunday dinner, I did not tell them that. Instead, I asked, "When is the closing?" My father looked relieved by my calm. "Next Friday, and the buyers know I am coming to get my things." My mother blinked. "Your things," photographs, the sewing machine, Grandma's recipe box. Adam leaned back in his chair. "Come on, Elena. Do not turn this into some sentimental hostage situation. Mom and Dad have done enough for everyone." There it was, the old accusation, dressed in a new suit. I looked at him and said, "I am not asking them to keep the house. I am asking when I can collect what belongs to me," my father said. "We can talk about that later. The point is, this sale gives us a reset." Adam raised his glass to new beginnings. Everyone except me lifted a glass. I did not argue. I did not accuse them of hiding the sale. I did not tell them that the house was not theirs to sell alone. I simply stood, thanked my mother for dinner, and said I had an early morning. On the porch, my father followed me out. "Do not be difficult about this," he said. The words were quiet, almost pleading. That made them worse. I turned toward him. "I have not been difficult." He looked back through the window, toward Adam and my mother. "Your brother is under a lot of pressure. I know. We all are." I nodded. "Then you should have called me before you signed anything." His face changed just enough for me to know he understood. Not everything, not yet, but enough. "What are you talking about?" he asked. I put my keys in my hand. "Good night, Dad." The next morning, I met Morgan Bell at her office. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with silver streaks in dark hair and a desk covered in neat stacks of case files. She did not use dramatic language. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. She laid the deed in front of me. "Your grandmother planned carefully," she said. "Your parents have a life estate. You hold the remainder interest. The deed was properly recorded. The title company has to account for you." I asked what that meant for the sale. "It means you decide whether to participate," Morgan said. "It also means we need to understand exactly what representations have been made. Do you want to stop the sale?" I thought about Wren Street. I thought about the garden, the cracked towel, Florence's note. I thought about my parents' faces at dinner and Adam's eager smile. "I do not know," I said. "I want the truth." Morgan nodded. "That is a good place to start." Over the next few days, the truth came in pieces. The bear had signed a contract based on my parents' representation that they own the property free and clear. Adam had already told one of his business partners that a portion of the proceeds would be available within a month. My parents had used a bridge loan to cover urgent bills, assuming the sale would close on schedule. The more I learned, the less angry I felt and the more tired I became. Morgan did not rush me, but she insisted that I see every document before I decided what to do. The listing agreement was ordinary. The contract with the buyers was ordinary. The problem was in the disclosures and the assumptions attached to them. My father had signed a seller's affidavit stating that he and my mother were the only parties with an interest in the property. There was no line with my name. There was no note saying a recorded remainder interest existed. There was simply an empty space where I had been omitted. Morgan slid the affidavit toward me and let me read it in silence. "Did your father know this was not accurate?" I asked. She chose her words carefully. "I cannot speak to what he understood. I can tell you that the deed is clear, and the affidavit is inconsistent with it." I stared at the signature. My father's handwriting was familiar to me. I had seen it on birthday cards, school forms, checks for rent when I first moved out. Seeing it beneath a statement that erased me felt strangely intimate. It was not the signature of a stranger who had harmed me. That was what made it harder. We also discovered that the real estate agent had asked several questions about the old deed when the property was first listed. My mother had told her that the document was an old family planning form and that I was living out of state. I was not. My parents knew my address. They had eaten dinner at my townhouse. They had mailed Christmas cards to me there every year. When Morgan told me that, I felt something settle inside me. Until then, a part of me had been looking for an innocent explanation. Maybe they forgot, maybe they did not understand. Maybe the sale moved too quickly, but they had not just failed to invite me into a conversation. They had chosen a version of reality that made my consent unnecessary. The title company sent a notice that the closing could not proceed without resolution. The buyers asked for an extension. Their agent asked whether the family would be able to provide clear title within 30 days. And suddenly, the quiet crisis my parents had hidden began to press against every wall of their lives. My father called Morgan directly before he called me. She told him she represented me and could not discuss my decisions without me. He left her office a message saying this had become needlessly adversarial. I heard the voicemail later, sitting on Morgan's couch. I did not feel triumphant. I felt sad because I recognized the language. In my father's mind, the moment I stopped accepting the role he assigned me, I became the person creating conflict. He could not see that the conflict had existed long before I said one word. Morgan asked whether I wanted to authorize an independent title search. I did. The report was thorough. It confirmed the life estate and remainder interest. It also showed a small line of credit my parents had taken against the property years earlier. That loan had been paid off, but a newer bridge loan was listed in their financial disclosures. Its maturity date was only 10 days after the scheduled closing. That was when I understood the urgency. They were not selling because they had decided it was time to downsize. They were selling because they had backed themselves into a corner and hoped I would become one more silent resource they could use to get out. I wanted to call my father and ask why he had not told me. I wanted to ask why, after all the years I had spent trying to be dependable, he would rather risk a failed sale than admit he needed to speak to me honestly. But I did not call. I went to work. I finished a set of renovation drawings. I returned a contractor's question. I took a walk after dinner. That may sound small, but it mattered. It was the first time I faced a family crisis without allowing it to consume every room of my own life. At home, I opened Florence's old envelope again. Along with the certified deed and the attorney's letter, there was a page in her handwriting I had never fully read. It was not a legal instruction. It was a list of ordinary things: the maple tree, the blue tile, the kitchen table where she made dough, the place in the back garden where my grandfather had buried a coin when they moved in. At the bottom she had written, "A house can make people greedy if they forget it was built to hold love, not prove who wins." I read that line 3 times. The next morning, I asked Morgan to contact the estate attorney who had prepared Florence's papers. Judith Rowe had retired to another state, but she agreed to speak by video call. Her face appeared on Morgan's computer screen, older but unmistakably direct. "Your grandmother was very specific," Judith said. "She loved your parents. She wanted them safe. But she was concerned that the home would be used as collateral for someone else's choices, and she wanted you to have a voice if that ever happened. Did she think this would happen?" I asked. Judith paused. "I think she hoped it would not." But hope is not a legal strategy. That sentence became one of the things I carried with me through the weeks that followed. Hope was not a legal strategy. Neither was guilt. Neither was being the easy daughter. I asked Judith whether my grandmother had left any instructions about a sale. She said there was no restriction preventing one, as long as every person with an interest was represented and the arrangement was voluntary. Florence had not tried to trap my parents in the house. She had tried to prevent them from making a decision that erased me. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that I might agree to the sale. Not because my parents deserved a rescue, but because the house was not the only way to honor my grandmother. I could honor her by refusing to let the sale become another story about how I had been used. I could make it a story about truth, consent, and limits. I wrote down what I needed before the meeting. I wanted the old bridge loan paid in full. I wanted my parents to meet with an independent financial advisor. I wanted an accounting of the sale proceeds. I wanted the possession date adjusted so I could retrieve family items without being rushed. And I wanted one more thing that felt harder to name. I wanted my parents to say out loud that I had a right to be there. I did not put that last part in the legal documents. Some things cannot be required by a contract. But I kept it in my heart where it could guide what I was willing to accept. They had not simply excluded me. They had built an entire rescue plan on the assumption that I would either never know or would do what I had always done: absorb the damage quietly. Morgan sent a formal notice to the title company confirming my interest and requesting copies of all closing documents. We did not threaten anyone. We did not make public accusations. We stated the facts. The response came quickly. The title officer, a man named Gregory Hale, scheduled a meeting for Wednesday morning. My parents were invited. So was their real estate attorney. Morgan suggested I attend. Tuesday night, my phone began ringing. My mother called first. She sounded frantic. "Why did a title company call your father asking about you?" I took a breath. "Because my name is on the deed." There was silence. Then she said, "That old paperwork does not mean you own the house. It means I have an interest in it. Your grandmother would never have wanted you to hold this over us." I closed my eyes. Grandma made the arrangement, not me. My mother began to cry. She told me my father was embarrassed. She said Adam was terrified. She said I was tearing the family apart over a technicality. I listened until she ran out of words. Then I said, Mom, I did not put the house on the market. I did not accept an offer without telling you. I did not promise Adam money that was not mine to promise. You are being cold. No, I said. I am being clear. The next call came from Adam. He did not cry. Are you trying to ruin me? He asked. I was standing in my kitchen, looking at the basil plant on the windowsill. Outside, rain tapped against the glass. I am trying to understand why no one thought I deserved to know. I said, you have a good job. You have your own place. You do not need this. That sentence was familiar. It was the same logic my family had used every time they decided my needs were optional. Because I had built a life for myself, they believed I had surrendered the right to be treated fairly. It is not about needing it, I said. It is about you all deciding I did not matter. Adam sighed. You always make this emotional. No, I replied. You make it emotional when the facts do not go your way. He hung up. The meeting at the title company took place in a conference room with gray walls, a long glass table, and a bowl of hard candy no one touched. My parents arrived together. My father looked older than he had on Sunday. My mother clutched a leather folder against her chest. Adam came too. Even though he was not a seller and had no legal reason to be there, he sat beside my father, jaw tight. Gregory Hell began by explaining the purpose of the meeting. His voice was formal, but not harsh. During our title review, he said, we identified a recorded deed dated May 14, 2013. That deed conveys a life estate to Daniel Marlowe and Rose Marlowe, with vested remainder interest to Elena Marlowe. As a result, the current proposed transfer cannot proceed without Ms. Marlowe's participation. My mother looked at me as if I had caused the sentence to exist. My father's attorney tried to argue that the arrangement had been intended only as an estate planning device and that my parents had always handled the home as their own. Morgan responded gently. The intent is reflected in the recorded instrument. Ms. Marlowe is not disputing that her parents have lived there. She is asking that her legal interest be acknowledged. My father finally spoke. Elena, we did not know this would become a problem. I looked at him. You did not know because you did not ask. He shook his head. Your grandmother did this behind our backs. No, I said. She did it in an attorney's office. You were there. The room went still. I had not planned to say that, but it was true. He had been there at the end of the appointment. He had complained that it was unnecessary. He had simply decided, over the years, that his dislike of the document mattered more than its existence. Gregory placed certified copies on the table. One had the county recording stamp. One had the original legal description. My name appeared near the bottom in a line of plain, unremarkable type. Elena Marlowe, vested remainder grantee. For most of my life, I had wanted my family to see me. In that conference room, I realized that I did not need their recognition as much as I needed the truth to be visible without their permission. The Beers' attorney joined by phone. She said the buyers were still interested in the property, but they needed a clean title. They had no desire to become involved in a family dispute. They wanted to know whether all necessary parties could agree on a path forward. Morgan turned to me. Miss Marlowe, do you want to authorize the sale? Everyone looked at me. My mother whispered, please. Adam did not say anything. For the first time in his life, he seemed to understand that charm could not solve a document. I asked for a recess. In the hallway, Morgan and I stood near a framed photograph of the county courthouse. I could hear muffled voices from the conference room behind us. What do you want? She asked. I thought about Florence. I thought about her hand over mine at the dining room table. This is not about getting something. It is about not being erased. I do not want to punish them, I said, but I will not sign a sale that turns my grandmother's protection into Adam's bailout. Morgan nodded. Then we can set terms. The terms were simple, though they were not easy for my family to accept. The sale could proceed only if the closing statement reflected my legal interest. A portion of the proceeds would go directly into a protected retirement account for my parents, enough to secure a modest apartment and pay off the bridge loan. A separate portion would be paid to me, not because I had asked to profit from the house, but because I was an owner and because I refused to pretend otherwise. The remaining money could not be released to Adam or his business without my parents' independent financial counsel. I also required that Florence's belongings be inventoried and divided according to her written memorandum. My father looked hurt when he heard the terms. "You do not trust us," he said. I answered honestly. "Not with decisions you make about me without me," my mother said. "What will people think?" It was almost enough to make me laugh. People had thought we were close. People had thought my parents were generous. People had thought Adam was successful. The truth had been sitting in a county record book the entire time. "People will think you sold your house," I said. "They do not need to know anything else." Adam finally spoke. "So that is it. You are going to control the money now." I looked at him. "No. I'm going to control my signature." The conference room did not explode after I named the terms. No one slammed a hand on the table. No one shouted. The silence was worse because it forced everyone to sit with what I had said. My father stared at the closing estimate. The numbers were not cruel. They were honest. The bridge loan would be paid. The property taxes would be cleared. My parents would have money for housing and a protected account for the future. The only thing missing was the easy cash Adam had imagined for his business. Adam looked at the pages as if they were written in a language meant to insult him. "So you get paid for doing nothing," he said. Morgan shifted slightly beside me, but I answered before she had to. "I did not do nothing," I said. "I was named in the deed. I was excluded from the sale. I am here because you all treated that as the same thing." He laughed once, without humor. Grandma was old. She did not know what she was doing. My father said, "Adam," but Adam had already gone too far. I could see it on my mother's face. Even she understood that insulting Florence would not bring the money back. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing, I said. She knew that when things got hard, this family would look for the quietest person in the room and expect her to give up first. My father leaned forward. "That is not fair." I looked at him. Was it fair to list the house without telling me? Was it fair to tell the agent I lived out of state? Was it fair to accept an offer and build a financial plan around my signature before you even asked for it? He opened his mouth, then closed it. The beer's attorney spoke through the conference phone. She said the buyers were willing to extend the closing if all parties signed an amendment. Gregory Hell explained that the title company could prepare an escrow arrangement once the ownership shares and conditions were finalized. Morgan took notes. My parents' attorney asked whether the proceeds could be released quickly after closing. I watched the professionals do what professionals do. Take a family wound and translate it into deadlines, affidavits, percentages, and signatures. Part of me hated the impersonality of it. Another part of me was grateful. A process did not care who my father considered the favorite child. A record did not soften because my mother cried. A deed did not disappear because Adam needed a miracle. When the meeting ended, my parents did not leave immediately. My mother approached me near the elevator. "Can we talk privately?" she asked. Morgan asked if I wanted her to stay. I said no. I wanted to hear whatever my mother had to say without witnesses who might make her perform it differently. We stood by the window overlooking the courthouse square. It was a bright day. People moved below us with coffee cups and folders, unaware that my whole childhood had just been reduced to a property file. My mother held her leather folder against her chest. We were scared. She said, I know. Your father thought the deed was just something Florence did because she worried too much. You knew about it. I knew there were papers. I did not understand what they meant. I almost told her that not understanding was not the same as not being responsible. But she looked tired, and I had spent too many years explaining obvious things to people who did not want to hear them. Why did you tell the agent I lived out of state? I asked instead. She looked away. We did not want to upset you before we had a solution. That answer hurt more than a lie would have. They had not wanted to upset me. They wanted to avoid the possibility that I would say no. Mom, I said, a solution is not something you create by removing the one person who has a right to be part of it. Tears filled her eyes. I did not think you would understand what Adam is going through. I felt a familiar old ache, but this time it did not pull me under. I understand exactly what Adam is going through, I said. What you do not understand is what I have been going through for years. She did not answer. I left before I said more than I wanted to. The pressure did not stop after that. It became more organized. My Aunt Karen called to say she had heard I was holding up my parents' sale. My cousin sent me a message asking whether I was really going to let an old deed come between me and my father. An old neighbor stopped me at the grocery store and said she hoped my parents were okay because they had been through so much. I realized my family had begun telling a story about me. In their version, they were frightened seniors trying to sell a home, and I was an ungrateful daughter using legal paperwork to demand money. There was no mention of the hidden listing, the false seller affidavit, or the fact that Adam's debt was waiting in the background. For one day, I wanted to correct everyone. I wanted to send documents, screenshots, and timeline notes. I wanted people to know I had not created the mess. But Morgan reminded me that public explanations rarely bring peace. Respond to the people who matter, she said. Do not build your life around people who have only heard one side because one side was more dramatic. So I called Aunt Karen. I told her I loved her, but I would not discuss the details of a legal matter through family gossip. I told her my parents would be safe, that the sale was moving forward, and that I needed her not to pressure me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your grandmother always said you saw more than you said." I did not know whether it was an apology or a warning. Maybe it was both. Adam tried another approach. He came to my townhouse on a Thursday evening without calling. I saw his truck through the front window and almost did not answer, but I did. He stood on the porch with rain on his jacket and anger under his eyes. "Can we talk?" he asked. We sat at my kitchen table. The same kind of table where Florence had shown me the deed years earlier, though mine was smaller and scarred from a thrift store I loved. Adam began with business numbers. He said he had investors waiting. He said he could repay my parents once the next project came through. He said the house money was a bridge, not a bailout. I listened. Then I asked, "Did you know they listed the house before they told me?" He looked down at his hands. "Did you know my name was on the deed?" He was quiet for a long time. "I knew Grandma had done something," he said. "Dad said it would not matter." That was the closest he came to honesty. "You knew," I said. "I knew they were trying to solve it." "No," I said. "You knew they were trying to get around me?" He became defensive again. "You always had your own life. You were never here the way I was." I felt the old instinct to defend myself, to list every visit, every pharmacy run, every Wednesday dinner with Florence. Then I stopped. I did not owe him an accounting of love. "I was here," I said. "You just did not notice unless you needed something." He looked at me with a mixture of resentment and something almost like shame. "I need this, Elena." I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the streetlights had come on. I thought about all the years I had wanted Adam to see me as a sister rather than an obstacle. "I hope you find a way through your business problems," I said. "But you will not find it through my signature." He left without saying goodbye. After he was gone, I did something I had never done before. I did not cry. I made tea. I washed the cup. I went to bed. That was not because I did not care. It was because I had finally learned that caring about someone did not require me to sacrifice my own peace every time they made a demand. The closing was delayed by 3 weeks. During that time, my family tried every version of the old pressure. My mother sent long messages about how much stress my father was under. My father left voicemails saying he did not recognize me. Adam sent a spreadsheet claiming he could turn the sale proceeds into a profitable investment within 6 months. I did not answer the emotional messages immediately. I did not debate the spreadsheet. I responded through Morgan when a legal issue required a response. I met my parents once at a coffee shop to discuss the inventory of Florence's belongings. My mother brought a list that included the sewing machine. She said it should go to Adam because he might want it for the kids someday. I looked at her for a long time. "Adam has never used a needle in his life," I said. "That is not the point." "No," I said, "the point is that you still think his future deserves more consideration than my history." My mother looked down. I took the sewing machine. I took the recipe box. I took the photographs. I also took Florence's yellow envelope, which had been tucked behind a drawer in her desk. Inside was the note she had written years before. "Ellie, if you are reading this, I am sorry someone made you feel like you had to prove you belonged. A home is not only walls. It is the people who choose to care for what is inside it. You have done that. Do not let guilt make you hand over the part of yourself you spent years building. Love always, Grandma Florence." I read the note in my car and cried for the first time since the sale had been announced, not because I wanted the house back. By then, I knew the house could not stay exactly as it was. My parents could not afford it. The neighborhood was changing. The buyers had plans for it. Grief was not the same as ownership, but the note reminded me that my grandmother had not left me a burden. She had left me a boundary. At the final closing, I signed after every condition had been put in writing. My parents signed too. Adam did not attend. The title officer handed each party copies of the documents. My name was there again, not hidden in an old deed this time, but printed beside the signatures that completed the sale. As we stood to leave, my father paused near the door. "I was wrong," he said. It was not a grand apology. He did not explain everything. He did not say he understood every year of being overlooked. But it was the first time he had said those words to me without adding a reason why I should forgive him immediately. I nodded, "I know." My mother cried quietly. I did not comfort her. That was another boundary I had learned. Her feelings were real, but they were not mine to manage. For several months after the sale, we barely spoke. My parents moved into a smaller apartment near a park. My father started seeing a financial counselor. My mother joined a book club and, according to a neighbor, complained less about everyone else's choices. Adam eventually took a job with a construction supply company. He did not become rich. He did not get the rescue he expected. But he had a chance to build something without using my parents' home as the foundation. I used part of my share to restore an old community center downtown. It had once been a library, then an after-school program, then a neglected building with leaking windows and an uncertain future. My firm had been hired to renovate it, and I volunteered to lead the design work. On the first day of construction, I stood in the empty main room and listened to the echoes. I thought about Wren Street. I thought about the way a building can hold history without being trapped by it. I thought about how a home can be loved and still be released. A year later, my father called me on a Wednesday afternoon. He said he had found one of Florence's old recipes and wanted to know if I remembered how she made the apple cake. I did remember. We talked for 20 minutes. Not about money, not about Adam, not about the house, just apples, cinnamon, and the fact that Florence always added more butter than the recipe said. It was not a perfect ending. Perfect endings are usually another kind of lie. My family did not suddenly become honest because a county clerk found my name. My parents still had habits. Adam still had pride. I still had moments when a careless comment could make me feel 12 years old again. But I was no longer waiting for them to tell me I belonged. The record had already said it. My grandmother had already said it. And eventually, I learned to say it to myself. If this family conflict story stayed with you, remember this: being calm does not mean you have no limits. Being kind does not mean you have to disappear. And when someone tries to rewrite your place in the family, you do not always need to shout over them. Sometimes you need to find the paper, learn the truth, and let the facts stand where you have been standing all along. Thank you for listening. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more family conflict stories about quiet strength, family betrayal, and the kind of truth that changes everything without ever needing to raise its voice.